Block Party Prairie Point Favorites Month 3. This is for November. So I'm going to show you this month's block. Looks like this, a big square in a square kind of effect, but with a 9 patch in the middle and some half square triangles in the corners. So I'm going to show you 3 different items here today. So we'll get started with the half square triangles. So beginning with the directions here, I'm going to start with step number 1, and that's making your half square triangles. So you take your 2 squares, put them together. These are a little smaller than your pattern calls for. This is just for my demo purpose here. And you will draw a line on them. Let's go over to this side where it'll show up a little bit better for you. The directions usually say to draw a line on the background. Okay, now a lot of your marking techniques will not show up on this dark color that you're using for the Amish colorway. So I like to use a mechanical pencil, and this one is a 3-way. So you turn it in different colors. There's a gray lead, there's a pink one, and there's a white one. There's other colors of lead that you can put in there too. But when you have this, it's just so convenient that you can make your choice of what color you want to use on there. Pattern says to draw the line. Now, if you watched some of my videos before, I tell you how I like to, instead of drawing the line, I like to just cut and sew my 1/4 inch seam along there. Either way, if you don't like to do it that way, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing it by drawing the line. But a lot of people have really benefited from learning that way of just cutting it. Okay, then you're going to take your half square triangles, which I have a few of them here, and you're going to square it up. And I'll start with the block lock ruler. Put my block lock ruler with a little groove on the back, logo on the lower side of the 2 pieces because the seam is pressed into one direction, and I'm gonna, so that makes that side a little higher. It makes a little hill there. This is like a valley. So I'm going to put the logo on the valley side, and I'm going to trim off those 2 edges, making sure when I trim that my corner is right on the seam line. Then I can turn this around. It's one way of doing it. Come over here, make my 3.5 inch lines of the ruler line up with the cut edges I just made, and trim off, not much left, but trim off a little bit there so it's an exact perfect square. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time. If you don't have okay, you can see if I have my logo on the wrong side, the corner of the ruler is not going to come out in the right spot. So I'm going to put that on there again, making sure my 3.5 inch is right inside the unit I'm cutting. Cut it there and there. And if I don't have a mat to turn around, I can just turn this around. I have to turn my ruler around too. Lay it on there, 3.5 inch line. Now if you're going to do a number of these and in the same measurement, it's nice to have little stickers, arrow stickers on there that will point you right to where your 3.5 inch line is, so that you don't have to search around for it every time. Okay, so to do it with the Tucker trimmer. Okay, so I'm going to trim this up to 3.5. So I'm going to use the corner with a half circle on it, not the corner with the whole circle. 3.5. I'll put my line right on there. It does not have the groove on the back, but you do line it right up with your seam. My 3.5 inch markings here are inside my block unit. Trim that up. Turn this around. Trim it up again. And makes a nice 3.5 inch square. On this one, you're going to want to use the little grips on the back because it is a pretty slick ruler, but this will really help hold it in place so it doesn't slide around. Otherwise, it moves very easily. And then another way, again, is with your regular Creative Grids ruler with a diagonal line on it. So I'll just put that on there. You can use any size. You can use a great big one, but it's easier with a smaller one. And my 3.5 inch is inside my square unit. Trim that off, just barely there. Okay, turn this around. 3.5 inches. Make sure that my corner is right here at the corner of where the 3.5 inch lines meet. My 3.5 inch lines stay right on the cut edges, and then this diagonal line goes straight up the seam line and meets right at the seam, so that the seam comes out right at the corner. Okay, another perfect square. So any of those methods work really well. Block lock, tucker trimmer, or just your regular ruler. Now we are going to move on to the flying geese. Okay, the method for doing flying geese on this pattern is the fast flying geese method. It's probably the one we'll use most or all of the times we have flying geese units. But if you look at this block, this is a flying geese. So it looks like it's a big square in a square type unit. But when you look closely, all you do is make a flying geese. So that makes it much easier knowing how you're going to do that. So I have a line that I've drawn on here with my 3-way pen. I use the white again because I have the dark background. And then I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of the line. Okay, so I'm going to take my presser foot, lay the 1/4 inch edge of the presser foot right on the seam line. And I came off of a little leader there, so it makes it go real nicely onto that corner. And sew all the way across 1/4 inch. Now before I sew down the other side, I want to tell you about the presser foot that I'm using. This is called a little foot, and it's a little plastic presser foot that helps you to get a perfect 1/4 inch seam. And it won't fit on all machines, but it will fit on a lot of them. These are designed for the Singer Featherweight, but I found that it works very well on the Eversewn, works great on my Pfaff at home, so I think I'm going to start using this one a little more. It's a little plastic foot, and there's 3 different styles of it. We have also one for Neki, Elna, Janome machines, and it's just a foot without a shank. This one has the shank already on it. And then we have one for the Singer 301, which is a little different from the Featherweight, and then all slant machines. So you have to know whether your machine is a straight or slant needle on there. Okay, so now I'm going to finish, and what I'm going to do is sew down here again, and if you have the very edge of this foot right on your drawn line or on your raw edge, if you're sewing along the edge, then the needle is placed 1/4 inch from it. But you have to make sure that you don't let that edge go to the inside or outside of that line. Okay, now let's go cut that. All right, now I'm going to put my ruler on here and cut right along here. I really like this 3.5 by 12.5 inch ruler because it's small enough, it's not getting in the way that a 24 inch ruler would be, and it's just the right size for this. Okay, then I'm going to take this and press this to the side. I'm going to do that to both units. And then I'm going to put my other square on here. I need to draw a 1/4 inch line on there. The one I'm making is actually smaller than what you will be making for this quilt block. But the techniques are exactly the same. Okay, we're going to go to the machine and sew these up. Make sure that's right on the edges there, all squared up. Okay, we're going to go trim these again. Okay, I'm going to take my ruler and cutter, divide that. Got a little extra thickness in there. I didn't put enough pressure on it. Okay, so this is going to make 4 flying geese units all in one step. Press these all aside like that. All right, then I'm going to move on to my other units. These are the units that I've made for my blocks. And I can choose from a lot of different techniques for trimming these up. So what I'm going to start with is the Ultimate Flying Geese ruler. And since this is a 3.5 by 6.5 inch flying geese unit, which finishes at 3 by 6, I'm going to look on the ruler here where it says 3 by 6. It's a white line with an F on it. I'm going to put that white line, the F up at the corner, right there on the unit. And trim 2 sides here. I can only trim 2 because the other 2 extend past the edges. Then I'm going to turn this around, turn my ruler around, go over here to the 3 by 6. Put that on those cut lines, and the diagonal lines here should line up with my seam line. Where it comes to at the corner here, it should be right at the seam. Where this comes, these meet here should be right on the seam line. And there you go. Okay, this is a great way to have flying geese units that are exactly 6.5 by 3.5 inches, and you don't have to worry about them being wonky and trying to fit them into your block. The other one I'm going to show you is the wing clipper, and it has markings on here. Somebody was using it for a smaller block and they marked it, which is a great idea. I'm going to leave that there, but I'm going to move on to the 3.5 by 6.5 inch markings. So to do that, I'm going to put the 3.5 inch X up here, right there at the corner of my triangle. At the same time, I'm going to look to make sure the 6.5 inch, 3.5 inch lines here are right at the seam of the unit there. And over here, oops, it moved a little, make sure that this 3.5 and this edge here are right at the seam. I'm going to trim these 2 sides. Then I'm going to turn it around, put my 6.5 inch, this is easy to do, to put the 6.5, 3.5 inch on those lines I just cut. But before I cut again, I'm going to double check to make sure that my corner of the ruler comes right out at the seam line on both of these corners. And I still have this 1/4 inch up here. Okay, another perfect flying geese unit. One more way to do it is to take out your Creative Grids ruler. The one that's already 3.5 makes it very convenient, but you can take your ruler, let's see, we're going to put this 45-degree line. There's 2 45-degree lines here. We're going to put those right there on the triangle. And at the same time, the lines are going to come right to the corners of that, okay? And because this is only 3.5 inches wide, I can trim 3 sides of it. So I'm going to go along here, there. Whoops. Put that back on there. Get my other side. And then I have one more side to do, so I'm going to put the 6.5 inch on there like that. And again, another perfect 3.5 by 6.5 inch flying geese unit. If you use a larger ruler like this, still works, but you can only trim 2 sides at a time, turn it, and then the other 2. The next step that you will do on this block is the 9 patch that goes in the middle. So I've got my 3 pieces. I've already sewed my little squares together in 3 little rows, and now I have to join these rows together so that it will end up looking like this. So what I'm going to do, because you want everything to come out perfect at the ends, when you sew these together, you want these to be lined up. You don't want one to be longer than the other. When you join here with these the seams, you want them to be lined up so that they're not offset a little bit. So you might want to put pins in there. The seams are going in different directions so that they nest real easily. That makes it easier to get them lined up. But I'm going to show you another technique that I really like that helps to do that when putting blocks together. And that is to take some of this seam align glue. Okay, it comes in a little bottle, and what you'll do is you're going to put a little dot right there next to the seam. Okay, both sides. And I'm even going to go down here on the ends. Okay, then I'm going to put this right on top of it. Now, it's not set until you set it with the iron. Turned off my steam because the moisture from this, the steam gives it, will keep it from sticking. I'm going to give it the heat here. And this is to use in place of using pins. Pins can sometimes get in the way, can cause your seams to shift a little, even that. So they're glued together, all right? So they're lined up very well. If they weren't, I would just pull it apart and do it all over again. But when they're lined up really well, then you just take it to your machine and sew it up. And then after you sew these together, you will press your seams in one direction. If a pattern doesn't say which direction, then it probably doesn't matter. Okay, so now I'm ready to put my block together. I'm going to lay these out like this. This is a little row across here. This is one here. And this is the middle row. So I'm going to join these together, this one and then this one. And when you put these together, again, you want the edges to line up. Okay, if you have trouble doing that, it might be because your presser foot is pushing it along. But do what you can to control it and make sure that when you put the ends together, they are lined up, either with pins or the seam align glue, or just controlling it with your fingers if you are able to do that. Okay, so I just sewed up the seam there, and notice that I have a good 1/4 inch seam allowance here and here. And so when I sew this to this unit down here, my 1/4 inch seam allowance will help that come out so that my triangle point goes right there. It doesn't go up here and get chopped off. If your point is too close to the edge, less than a 1/4 inch, then when you do a 1/4 inch seam, sewing this to either sashing or to another block unit, it's going to cut that off. So you want it to be right there so it isn't cut off. So on your pattern here, I emphasize measure twice, cut once. So for example, on the background, you cut 4-inch squares and you cut 4 1/4 inch squares. So don't flip-flop them in the directions here. This one takes the 4 inch, this step here takes the 4 1/4 inch. So be sure you get that right. Otherwise, you'll be coming in for more fabric, which we're always happy to give you, but I know it's not convenient for you. In addition to the rulers that I showed you for squaring up today, I showed you the little foot ruler for getting an accurate 1/4 inch. And so that is something we have. The seam align glue, which is a replacement for pins, and then the mechanical pencil, especially the 3-way one, which is very convenient to have. If you don't already have these and you're doing lots of sewing, making blocks and things, you'll really find them practical. And then another thing about the patterns, remember that each month. The patterns in here are laid out in the order in which they're listed here. So if you don't have a chance to find it any other way, the background is the first thing listed. That's in the back. Then the second fabric listed is dark, medium, and accent. So here it's background, dark, medium, accent, background, dark, medium, accent. Every month it should be that way. And so thank you for watching, and always let us know if you have any questions or need some assistance in putting your blocks together.